will be brutally honest. Ain't nothing but being brutally honest. Coming at you with another video.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome 49ers legend Darryl Pollard, undrafted from Weber State University, man. A BB, man. How's it going?
It's going good. That would be Weber, by the way. Let's go ahead and get that correct. It's a long,
Weber State, right?
Yeah. There you go. Now you go. Hey, you're not only disrespecting me, you disrespecting LaDainian Tom. Hey, look, we got LaDainian as well. You know, and we got a few guys from the Weber State that's now in the league. Matter of fact, the wide receiver in New Orleans, they big time receivers from Weber. So we got to get Weber correct. This with Weber.
Weber, man. But hey, how's it going, man? You know,
I'm doing good.
Yeah. What is it? 2-time Super Bowl champion, a guy that's been around the league with the Niners for many, many years. So tell me about yourself, man. What got you into football in the early part of your career?
Pretty much like everybody does, you know, as a little kid watching your stars that you watched on television. You know, kids are a lot more fortunate nowadays. They've got tons of channels and a lot of different decisions. But back in the day, we had ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS on a UHF channel. So you only saw certain players. There was no wide open network like it is now with the ESPNs and, you know, internet days and all that. So it was much different. You know, I mean, I came up during a generation when high school film was only passed around because you only had however many games you had that year, which may be about anywhere between 10 to 12 if you were going to playoffs. Rolls of film that went around for, anywhere from 40 to 80 guys to a team. That wasn't a whole lot of film to get noticed and to get moved around. So I came out of Colorado Springs, a small school, same school as Terry Miller and Cullen Bryant. Terry Miller was a runner-up Heisman Trophy to Earl Campbell. So, we all played on the offense, and I really didn't start playing defense until Mike Zimmer and Dave Campo, you may know those two coaches' name in the professional ranks, that moved me over as they had Mike Price as the head coach. We had Mike Price as the head coach at Weber State at that time, pulled me over to the defensive side of the ball, and that's when I started playing defense. So I hadn't even touched that part of the field at all. I just started playing a little, just because my friends was doing it in 5th, 6th grade.
Yeah, we all follow that same path with everybody else. You know, hey, my friends are playing. Why not? I come along. You know, it's like one of those different time, like you said. Like there wasn't none of that social media. You pretty much were just going outside, looking at other films like the tape and all the other stuff. So it was a little different.
Yeah, so it was just going out playing with your fellow friends, man. Back then, I remember Nerf football was the best game on the block. Everybody had a Nerf football. They didn't even really care about a leather football. You wanted a Nerf football so you could throw it as far as you could, put some spirals on it, and guys in the street ran in the cars and all kind of stuff, parked cars trying to get a first down. You made your own little first down marker. So it was pure fun. That's when kids weren't on their cell phones. They was, we didn't have them. You were outside getting exercise. You was breathing fresh air. You were outside having a good time, creating your own game,
Yeah, that was like a little bit before, that was before all that stuff started becoming around. Like maybe in the later 90s, that's when I was still going outside and playing with my friends. It wasn't like such a big deal then, but yeah, that was our way to get exercise, and that was a way to get our parents to get off our case,
Yeah, get out the house and stop tearing up my furniture. Yeah, exactly. Go outside and play.
Yeah. And yeah, street ball was pretty fun at the time, like a lot of stuff. I still think you can still do that to this day, but not like as active, like you just said. A lot of people go on their cell phones and all the other stuff, but different technology has changed over the years.
Yeah, and also, rural versus city living is different. Everybody wanted to move to the big city. You don't have that kind of space. Whereas, in rural areas, you got that kind of space. As we know here in California, we've got some pretty competitive schools within the cities of San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco, not to rule out the small cities that are in between. But realistically, the hardcore football is played out in Modesto and Salinas and, places Rockland and places outside the major zones. So, those kids don't have as much access or they don't really care about the video game aspect. I shouldn't say that because they still do. It's a pretty
Still
huge
do, but
industry, but
yeah, like Central Valley where I stay at, they get a little bit too. They got some talent coming out there.
correct. There's a lot of great talent coming, from the Modesto and Salinas and all those areas out there. So yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, Fresno this year they got this Worthy kid, man, from Kansas City. This guy's gonna be a baller.
There is a diamond in the rough, and of just about every area is just, can we find it and how serious they are about developing it. That's what really matters.
Yeah, you came into the league as an undrafted player from Weber State. Yeah, and I wanted to say it respectfully because I don't want to disrespect the name. But yeah, I interviewed a cornerback from college who was coming from that college, and he was on one of the pro days. Maxwell Anderson, I believe he was on that squad. Yeah, speaking of what got you into the league, I know you were coming in with the Seahawks, but what was that experience before you even came to the Niners?
So I was very fortunate. I had Kenny Easley as a roommate for a short minute. He was a equal of Ronnie Lott. They were probably, top two dogs as far as safeties during their time. Realistically, there were three dominant safeties. Dennis Smith was the baby. Kenny Easley was the old guy, and Ronnie was, right on his back. So, you know, as I can say, I've been through a web of blessings to come from a small city, or at that time considered a small city. And now they have over 1 million people. But when I was there, we had about 350,000 people there. So coming from what I call a small city, basically a military town with 4 military bases, and then going to Weber State and having uh, coaches that had pro potential of being pro potential coaches, and then going to a place like Seattle and being around a Kenny Easley and a Terry Taylor and those kind of guys that had an awesome secondary back then. And that also, Seattle Seahawks really started special teams as being a major part of football. Everybody just thought about offense, defense, but we had Rusty Hilger as a special teams coach, and Chuck Knox put a lot of emphasis on special teams. We took that as serious as we did as offense and defense. And I was fortunate enough to play as well with Vi Sikahima, who was like the number one punt returner, kickoff returner coming out of I want to say he came out of BYU or either Utah State. Maybe no, he came out of University of U. If I'm mistaken, that's where he came at. Came out of University of Utah, and so that even added more pressure to make special teams even great. So because I was supposed to be drafted, I was ranked like the 27th corner in the entire nation, coming from a small Division One AA school. I was ranked 27th in the entire nation. I was supposed to get drafted in the mid rounds that particular year, as we see in the draft today. However, that course starts. So if everybody starts grabbing a whole bunch of offensive linemen or D linemen, everybody else gets pushed to the side,
Yep.
and that's what happened that year. I think Vesty Jackson was the last defensive back taken, and he went to Chicago. I think he was like in the fourth or fifth round. It was really interesting how that whole draft came out there because I was picked by I can't remember the guy's name now. I remember the book. I think his name was Pfeiffer.
Pfeiffer.
Yeah, that does the pre-draft picks and the whole bit. Had books and everything about it, and it didn't happen. So I had a plane ticket to go to the New York Giants. They wanted to draft me, but they said they didn't have enough picks. Um, and so they had already had sent me a plane ticket. I hadn't signed a contract because you couldn't do that to go to New York Giants. And because they didn't draft me after they even traded for Mike Harding out of Denver, and ended up with 14 picks. I ended up Seattle was sitting in my dorm room, and I signed with Seattle, and I went to Seattle, having no idea that Seattle drafted two DBs before me, which was Eddie Anderson. Some people may remember him as the strongest strong safety that ever came out of college from Fort Valley State that could bench 500 pounds. He played for the Raiders for a short minute, or for a long time, actually. And then Patrick Hunter, who's actually here from the Bay Area, San Bruno area, that went to UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, and he got drafted second round to Seattle, but he stayed hurt the entire preseason. So I basically had made the team, but then USFL went bankrupt, and they claimed all their players from that pro league, and so they took experienced guys versus guys out of college. So I got released, and then I got picked up because Ray Rhodes and Ray Hawkins, and I know I'm throwing out a lot of names out there, but this is just
Yeah, Ray
history.
Rhodes is a good DB coach. I've heard a lot of good things about him. He was playing in the NFL for many, many years, and then he's been a long-time assistant.
And Ray Hawkins, who was my DB coach in Seattle, coached Ray when he's with the Giants. And so Ray Hawkins was the one that called Ray Rhodes about me. Not to mention Billy Wilson, who's now gone, bless his soul, a great scout for the Niners. He used to come to Weber all the time and scout me and talk to me. And Neil Donlin was a part of that. So when Ray Rhodes talked to Neil Donlin and the whole pro group looked at it here at the Niners, they actually invited me to come to the Niners. And that's how I got to the Niners. So it's word of mouth. It's work ethic. I had a great work ethic that came with me. I wasn't the guy that got in trouble. I wasn't out in the streets. I was really focused. I knew what I wanted to do, and I bust my butt to get there. So it was a lot of different connections that got me through all the minutia to finally became a starter and winning 2 Super Bowls with the Niners.
Yeah, like it had the connections with the coach, like you said, and that's what got Ray Rhodes to get you. So it's like, you know how they say with the job connection, you have these people that you know, and it gets you there. But like you went from a team like Seattle that was just kind of like a team that was just on the rise, but Niners were just the more dominant team, the team that was just a team of the decade. So you were in a pretty unique situation.
Right. And when I got to the Niners, I actually got cut in preseason. The first time I got cut once, and then we went into the strike year, and I actually stayed 1 week after the strike was over, and then that was in '87, and then the following year, Don Griffin and Tim McKyer held out, and the Niners went to London and got beat pretty good, and they called me from London and told me to come to training camp. Um, Craziest thing, dude. It's like I had met a lot of good people while I was here, and one of the guys I met would happen to be a friend of MC Hammer Group.
Oh yeah, that
So
rapper, yeah.
I got a chance to meet Stanley Burrell, which is MC Hammer, and hang out with those guys while I was still working out, trying to get with a team. Hadn't gotten picked back up. The Niners hadn't picked me back up. But after that, they were like, "Hey, we need you in camp. We don't have these guys. We need you in camp." So when they landed, I was at camp, ready to go. And the Hammer Group guys, I didn't have a car at that time. Those are the guys that actually took me down to training camp to get me there. And that's when I signed my contract. And then that year, I got cut every week after every preseason game because it was a numbers game.
Numbers game,
It's
yeah.
just how the
Just
game
like
was
you,
playing. And then they would
just like
sign me. Then they would sign me 2 days later, and I have the whole week practice. It was crazy. Cut, sign, cut, sign, cut, sign. So I finally,
yeah, it's like one of those kind of players. Like, you know, I've seen a lot of players who just get cut again and then they come back, and it's like, doesn't it get kind of frustrating for a minute? Like, you're like, where am I going?
well, I think a bigger part of that to me is I'm a faith-based person. Okay,
Okay.
I'm okay. So I couldn't be concerned. I felt like if this is if this is the progression that God wants me to go through, I'm going to go through it. That part is in His hands. I can't control that. Just like all the relationships that I had, that was nothing I planned. I felt like that was already pre-planned for me to go through that process. Okay, so just think about all those different connections that I just laid out. There are a lot of names that played for me to get to where I had to go for me to be able to exhibit to the public eye and even to myself that I belong and I should be there. These two jerseys aren't by, oh, by the way, you got lucky. And I don't know where these fireworks come from. This is something with Apple. But anyway, um, having said that, they weren't given to me. They were earned,
They were
but
earned.
there was a pathway that I had to go through to get to that, to be able to have back-to-back Super Bowl jerseys.
Oh,
So,
no, but yeah,
so
like you said, you had to work yourself, and you just didn't give up on your dreams. So
right.
that's what makes it so good about your story. Like you were like some of those other guys who got cut and weren't
Right.
given a fair chance. But then once the door knocked for opportunities, you kept capitalizing. So
E exactly, exactly. And so, if there was a frustrating part, it was, "Why am I being cut? Why am I being re-signed?" That was happening every week at the end of the week for the entire preseason until they finally brought me in. And then I played special teams that whole first year. We got the Super Bowl against Cincinnati. I came back the next year. Tim McKyer, they were still having issues with him. Um, and I'm not going to get into his personal stuff. And then I got put in a position and it was mine to take, and I never gave it back. And
yeah,
so I just worked it. I worked my butt off.
yeah. Just for those other players who happen to be in that situation as you, what would be the best advice for those kind of players? You know, the ones who are undrafted and just keeps getting cut. What would be your best kind of advice to them if they were in this situation?
The best advice I have for any athlete, because today is different.
Yeah,
We just had cut down day yesterday. Back then, there were 120 something players, in preseason. There's about 20 something DBs. Okay. Um, you don't know. You're in a room. You're not in individual door rooms. When you were a free agent back then, they didn't treat us with as much respect, and they didn't have the money they have now, right? Like
yeah.
minimum wage when I played, I was one of those guys that got minimum wage, which was my first year salary was $50,000.
Different
Okay.
pay then, yes.
Okay. So today that's a half a million for minimum wage, and everybody gets it, even if you're on the practice squad. So it's a
Yeah,
different day. All right. Um, we were in a room which happened to be a science lab with bunk beds like we were in the military. You had your trunk on the end of the bed. We all had, did all our showering and everything, up in the locker room. We had bathrooms to brush your teeth and all that kind of stuff to get yourself ready before you did everything. But it was a room like if you're going to band camp. Everybody's in a room with bunk beds.
yeah, we're
And there
roommates.
and there were none that were on top of you. They were just side by side. And I'll never forget, I remember at times I'm like, dude, what happened to such and such? Like, oh, they grabbed him yesterday. Guys would get up, get dressed, start walking up. On the way in Rockland, on the way to the practice facility was a cafeteria where we actually had breakfast or lunch or dinner. And some guys wouldn't get the knock on the door or the room. They would get the knock when they came to the cafeteria. Some guys got past the cafeteria, go to their locker, and they have no equipment in their locker. And they go back to the trainer. Trainer's like, you need to go down to the office and talk to them, and you wouldn't see them anymore. So people were getting plucked. People were getting plucked and getting released every day. You just didn't know who they were.
It was
So
like
all of
it
a
was a
sudden,
guessing game. It was like a guessing game. You didn't know which one it was, and then
it wasn't a guessing game. You don't have time to think about what's happening to anybody else. You could care less about what's happening to everybody else. Those that focus on others, you don't focus on your own business, and you're going to soon be that person as well.
that's
You
true.
would actually go when this person disappeared. You would ask somebody like, "When did they get him?" You'd find out because you cannot make adjustments. You can't allow the negativism to get in your head going, well, how many more days do I have left? You were there minute by minute, hour by hour, surviving.
Yeah, you can only control what you have going on, like your own
That's
destiny. It's
it.
like, yeah,
That's it. And
yeah,
the only time you start seeing the writing on the walls is if, this day I got 9 plays, this day I got 5, this day I got 2, this day I got none. When you didn't have any plays that day, it was time for you to go. They were getting ready to do something. You knew that, right?
yeah.
So
So
that's how that process worked back then. It was so different than it is now, right? Because remember, they still had to cut you healthy. So if you came to practice and they got you on film, even if you were hurt and you were still out there practicing, you were healthy enough for them to release you. So they wouldn't have to pay you. So there's a game there too,
Yeah,
right?
saving
But
money,
at the
saving
same
money.
time, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you don't want to get hurt because you can't make the club in the tub.
Yeah,
Okay. So
different
there's, you
time.
know what I'm saying? So there's
Yeah,
many different things that psychologically you could allow to play into your head, but you can't do that. You just
nah,
have to go give it your all.
yeah, and plus there was no distraction, so you had all your focus with none of that stuff. So it was just pretty much like if you got everything taken care of, you should be good. But
No computers, no cell phones, no
exactly,
none of that. You know, you
no,
went to the end of the
different
hall,
time.
put your money in the payphone, make a phone call. That was pretty much it. Just to let your parents know you were okay. Mad at another dude. If a guy was married, he'd been on the phone all day, so you couldn't call your family, let them know you were good. That was the way.
Yeah,
I mean, it was so monotonous that I couldn't tell you if it was Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because our games were only on the weekends,
well,
mostly Saturdays back then.
yeah, there were some games like that too. But was there like any other like teammates who just kept ribbing people, where it was just a little bit, behind the scenes? I've seen a lot of teammates do this before, where they kind of pull around. Did you ever become one of those victims, or kind of like one of
I
those
think
dudes that
we
did it?
the locker room is not a the locker room is never a safe place.
It's not.
Let's put it
No.
that way. Okay, so there's no HR in football. Just you got first of all, let's just go there. There's no HR in football. They talk about your
Okay.
mama, your grandmama, your wife, your kids, you, anything you did, fair game. It is what it was. You just gotta learn how you either got thick skin or you didn't.
That's right.
There was no HR system. Today it's a little different.
Yep.
When they start bringing in women reporters and putting up shower curtains in the showers, and and then people start talking about who was straight and who wasn't, and the whole bit. Then it became a different atmosphere. But prior to that, there was everything was fair game. There was
Yeah.
no there was no
You
HR.
either had tough
Zero.
skin, or you either had tough skin, or you couldn't hang with them. Is how
That's
it
it.
count.
That's
Yeah.
it. And you never wanted to alienate yourself because those are your teammates. So if you
Yeah.
didn't have tough skin, you learn to have it.
At least they had to learn to adjust to it a little differently and get used to it. Yeah.
Right. Right. Because football is a rough sport
It is.
in every facet of the game. There's nothing soft about it.
No,
Zero.
there's nothing soft about it, but they've been trying to change the rules of how you just hit players nowadays. Before it was just fair game; you could just hit anybody, and there wouldn't be no flags like that,
There were still flags, but it wasn't
like as bad.
focused since CTEs come about it, and that money is hitting the owner's pockets for taking care or benefits like that. That's changed a lot. That's made them change the game. I think there's a combination of parents wanting their kids to be okay when they leave the game, whether it's little league or whatever. And it's only. I mean, you got to remember too. Back then, think about all the NFL film games of the hardest hits in the NFL.
Yeah, hard
Think
to say.
about that. That created an atmosphere in itself, right?
Yeah,
So you got to think about it because there was only, and Ronnie never took illegal hits at people, and most of the time Ronnie didn't hit you with his head; he hit you with his chest. If you go back and you look at every highlight film, he's hitting you with his body. He's not using his head. That's not how Ronnie played, right?
use the shoulders or any other body parts I've seen, but like it was never
Yeah,
the helmet part.
right. And to this day, he's a little bit slow talking sometimes, but I think that's just his thought process as we get older. But
Yeah,
it's all there. Okay, it's all there. There ain't a conversation that will ever not be deep when you talk to Ronnie. A nickname we call him Bo. There would never, because that's what I'm used to calling it. But
both. All right.
yeah, but that you're gonna get the entire meat of the conversation with him. So getting back to the rules of the game, I understand what they're doing. This kickoff thing is going to take a little bit of time to get adjusted to it as well. To me, I don't like the new way of tackling. I see a knee, a back, a hip. I see something the way they're doing is grabbing a guy from behind and swinging him down backwards. That to me reminds me of the Gerald Wilhite days when he got his leg broke on the 1 yard line by I don't even want to call the athlete's name, but they were playing Minnesota. Denver was, and his foot, they call it, foot got caught in the turf, but I think it's as well as the position he was in when he was tackled. Um, I think you have a better opportunity to protect yourself if
Yeah.
the guy's in front of you versus the hog tackling and twisting from behind. I just don't agree with that. I understand that they're trying to keep the head out of it. And even college guys think that, you know what, even if you go at a guy and you catch him with your shoulder and he's in a defenseless position, I got to kind of agree with that after knowing what could happen to a person later in life. It's
Yeah.
just
Like
not that one hit.
some of those hits are kind of like a little bit like kind of like understandable, like you said, the CT if they were to go helmet, but if they tackled a certain way, they might have a severe injury where it can be like lingering with them for the rest of their life. And
Yeah, broken leg, broken fibula, broken ankle,
yeah,
broken, because at the end of the day, most of the guys I know, I mean, there's a few guys that have hurt shoulders, but for the most part, it's either their hips, their knees, or their head.
yeah. So like for most of these players, some of them were pretty wise for their NFL careers. Some of them actually retired a little earlier than expected. Like guys like Patrick Willis, he retired with pretty much trying to be in good health. Some of those guys
Well,
like
he retired because when he came into the league, he had really bad feet, and so his
yeah,
feet couldn't take it anymore. And I don't know if that's a genetic thing or what. That's his own personal thing. But most guys aren't fortunate to play only 7 years in the league and go to the Hall of Fame. That doesn't happen. If
it
you
doesn't
look at
happen
stats,
overnight.
that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, period.
But
He's
he got
one
in the
and
Hall of
only.
Fame for that short career,
Right,
but at least he
right,
made the
right,
most out of it.
right. So that's not necessarily that's an anomaly. That's not your every time occurrence. That's not happening. I mean, it just doesn't. Hell, I played 7 years in the league and broken leg, dislocated ankle. Now I've got uh, partial knee replacement and a ruptured right Achilles. Just I can't even tell you that a ruptured right Achilles really threw me off because I had no idea that was even possible. I was actually stepping to somebody and it went pop. So things are going to happen. Achilles seem to be a normal thing that's happening amongst a lot of athletes. I even spoke to a girl volleyball player who was a setter that it happened to her. She's just now getting into college. So I don't get the whole Achilles now. Maybe it's in the fluid
Yeah,
or something. I don't get that, but that's a pretty common one. But most of the guys are knees and below and hips.
yeah. And those are the injuries that have been more common with these players because they're moving up the hip tackle away because of what it was, the risk factor, and then the Achilles injuries are like something to where it takes time for some of these players to come back to the same form. Like for Drake Greenlaw, right? He had that Achilles injury in the Super Bowl.
Right.
He was doing well in coverage. Once he got hurt with the Achilles, man, that was pretty much a snake bite right there, man. It was just.
Right.
But that takes time for some athletes, man. I think Bowman had an injury like that also. Besides the ACL, he had a torn Achilles also, and
Yeah.
it takes away your coverage skills a little bit.
So the thing about Achilles is that if you look at all the different studies, um, there's a lot of different ways to fix it. But it is a full year healing
Like recovery,
process.
yeah, full year.
And then you have to rehab it. So the thing of it is uh, some people open you up like a flower. And a lot of doctors don't like to do that, but they feel like that's the only way they correct it. So they do it because the further you get away from the heart, the less blood supply you get. It influences how well it heals, right?
Yeah,
So
it,
that's
it
number
takes.
one. And so you got an infection rate. You got a higher probability of infection rate. Then they have the percutaneous. I chose percutaneously to do it, right? Then you have these arguments about um, what's the best way for it to heal? Do you lock it down and let it get so tight that you've got to work so hard to stretch it out again? Or does that cause too much force and you put yourself in potential to be able to re-rupture again? So there's that. You got this new thing that came out that said after 4 weeks, we need to start getting you moving. Not putting weight on it, but start getting you moving. Some doctors feel like because that's the largest tendon, you need to have it to be tight as possible, that you don't want to put that much pressure on it. So there's a lot of arguments in the healing of
Yeah.
Achilles. I don't know what I don't think any doctor has said this is the perfect way. I know there's doctors, or should I say, any science that said there's a lot of doctors that say that the way they do it, it's a great way to do it. But science has not put that together yet. So when you're not here to talk to me about medical, you're talking about football. But again, all these energy, all these different things that they have, they all affect what's going to happen to you later. So
Yeah.
they're trying to protect the player. At the end of the day, they're protecting the player more so for their money, not for the livelihood of the player for the most part.
Yeah. And in your guys' days, the pay wasn't that big. So I guess I can understand where you're coming from. Like for some protection, some players should get that safety help and whatever they need for everything. But do you think that the stuff they're adding some extra stuff into the protection, man? Like what is it with the guardian cap, man? Now they make it optional for these football players now.
Again, that's a head injury.
Yeah, head injury.
And because of CTE, which is still, I mean, here's something that you can't test to see if you're even a candidate of even getting or having until you're gone already, right?
That's true.
So the only thing that I know that they're testing for is early detection of Parkinson's and stuff like that, but they haven't been able to do that for CTE. So that's just another piece of protection. Now, let me ask you a question. In preseason, how many times you see anybody wearing it during the game?
Not that many.
Right. How many players wore it when I played?
Can't even tell. No, none. One? Just one?
And I'm gonna tell you his name.
Okay.
Steve Wallace, the big offensive lineman. Remember that big thing he had on his head?
Oh, remember 74? Was that number 74? Oh, okay, that dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so he actually wore something back in the day. He was one of the early guys that started doing that to save his head from concussions.
Oh, so he was the original. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, before anybody knew about CTE.
Man, that was like ahead of its time before technology became such a thing. Now that when you look at the injuries, like ACL injuries used to be career endings in your guys' days, but now it's such a quick recovery for like maybe up to a year, and you can be able to come back a little bit the same.
Yeah, it's a quick healing process.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just crazy, man, how things change.
Yeah.
I mean, life changes. So it is what it is. But yeah, man, there's a lot. I'm not against the new rules. I like the rules. Everybody used to ask me before they talked about the tackling was, what is it about, you guys could beat the receivers up? No, we couldn't. After 5 yards, we couldn't touch a receiver either. That rule has always been there. They just got a little lax in allowing guys to fight downfield, but that rule has always been in the play. And it was more toward rookies than was veterans. Veterans got away with it. And then what they call it, experience. Oh, he's an experienced player. He knows how to get away with it, right? You do. You learn.
Yeah, they learn to be savvy and learn to get better at it. Like, I think that rule was because of the Mal Blunt rule, right?
I don't know when that rule came in, that 5-yard rule came in, because it was already had been established and we already had it. We didn't have it in college, but we did have it in the pros. So I adjusted to it as soon as I got in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that rule was adjusted because they call it the Mel Blunt rule.
Okay.
Because he was really master at the coverage skills, and I guess they made it to a point where he couldn't do what he did before.
Yeah, I know. The only rule I know they adjusted was the whole sticking rule, because my good friend Lester Hayes, who's a good friend of mine, he used to have it everywhere, on his socks, everywhere.
Oh yeah, he's a nice, friendly guy. I met him at a Walmart a while back. Really nice guy.
Yeah, that's my guy right there.
I think he had the most interceptions in 1980. I believe he had the most interceptions, and then I think he was Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Yeah, like one of those nice guys. I mean, like you were saying, like even when we were like when I was showing that post about the fan fights, you even said that most fans should be more respectful, but you said there's just a different kind of a environment.
Um, Fights were happening because I remember when I got hurt, and I broke my leg and dislocated my ankle. Or I didn't do it, but a teammate of mine did it. And we were at Candlestick, and I was taking the elevator up to go sit in the box to watch the game. And I remember seeing a Seattle fan get knocked out by a Niner fan. And this was way back in the early 90s. Um, so it's always existed, but to me now it seems like it's become such a fraternity of people that feel like going to a game because they bought a ticket, they have rights to disrespect another person or to even disrespect the person on the field. At the end of the day, what people have to understand is it's still just a game. We are
Exactly.
all living beings, and yes, we all have a pride. Um, but it's the same respect. You don't go in the mall and you don't go in talking about somebody's wife, and you don't go in. And I don't know what happened. I'm just figuring that probably there was some mouthing going back and forth, and it turned into a fight like it always does, as we see in many other videos. Not understanding what started it, but you know, yeah, my dad used to always say the first thing you do is mind your own business, because if you mind your own business, you don't have time for the next person.
That's
And
true.
so,
Because if
you
you
know,
don't say a word or if you don't get involved with it, then you don't have nothing to worry about as far as the
right,
other stuff. But
right,
yeah. So when you look back at your career, man, most people can't. Most people wouldn't be in wouldn't like say what you would say, man. You earned the right for that uniform that you were wearing, and you earned the right to be a starter in that Super Bowl. So you can just
right.
say, hey, at least I got a chance to do that.
Right, right. And the thing about it is, I don't care who it is. If people want to ask me, different techniques or what we're working on, I'm down to help you and talk to you about it. And I'm also open to hear what you have to say, because even when I was coaching, and I'm looking at to get back into it a little bit here and there, because I did coach at football's university, flying around the country, as well as even as far as Switzerland, coaching U.S. football, is listening to other pro athletes, and as well as my players. Part of being a good coach is listening to what your players tell you, so you can get their view. Because the whole idea of it is, if I walk down the street and all I see is this, and all I believe is what I see, that's what it is, and I don't have time to open it up and do this, so I can see more and have a bigger peripheral vision. That's the same way in communication. So when I'm coaching a kid, the first thing I give them the liberty is, first of all, thank you for allowing me to coach you, because that is a privilege. For
It is.
someone to allow you to listen, for them to listen to you, that is a privilege, right? So the respect
Yeah.
in return is, communicate with me and tell me what you see, how you feel, and what's happening with you, so I can understand what you're receiving. So I can may say, hey, I get that. That's great. And I didn't think of it that way. Let me add this to it. Now the picture's gone from a 48-inch screen to an 85-inch screen to a 100 screen. You know what I'm saying? 100-inch screen, right? And we
Yeah.
both get this chance to see it. Now we're both learning and we're both moving forward, right? Because it's you got to keep adding on, right? It can't be
Exactly.
one way as the highway. It has to be a communication, a form of
Open, you got
communication.
to be more open about it, and you got to be
Right.
able to figure out. Like, one thing about you is you probably bring more knowledge to those young guys, and they be able to benefit more from it. And then maybe you're more open to what works for them, and then maybe it can mix in, like you said.
Absolutely. And that's what I've coached quite a few kids. The number one thing is, like, I want you to get comfortable with me right now, because I'm already comfortable with you. Just tell me. And if something doesn't fit with you, tell me that too. Right. And as long as we're communicating that with equal respect, right, we're going to think all we're both going to do is grow. We're both going to grow.
Exactly.
Right. If you're not growing, you're dead.
No,
So
you got to be willing to work and get better, and
that's
take.
it.
Yeah, like playing offensive line or D line. That's something I had to learn. And
Yeah.
it didn't go overnight, but it took time for me to
No.
adjust to it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I grew up during the age, and don't do what I do as I say. Right. And so now it's like, hold on. I'm an example and I want them to be example, but I still have room to grow as well. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that open. You got to keep it going. Right. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty much how Baltimore beat us in our first Super Bowl as the 49ers, is when the lights went out. You could see that documentary where Harborough was going back and forth with his wide receivers. And they started telling him stuff they were seeing that he wasn't seeing. And they were calling all the plays, and they started redesigning stuff because they had time to do it because the lights were out and they couldn't play the game in New Orleans. You guys, do you remember that? You
Yeah,
don't
the
go back
lights.
and look at it.
That
Go
was
back
one of
and
the
look at that
most.
documentary.
That was one of
That's
the. Yeah,
go ahead. That was one of the most what?
it was one of the most controversial Super Bowl I've ever seen, where the lights just go off out of nowhere. Like, how the hell did that happen?
Right. But again, that could be a grit thing. I have no idea. As players, we adjust. Those players adjusted on the Baltimore side. Those coaches adjusted on Baltimore side, and they open up a can of whoop ass after that.
Yeah, they were really giving us a hard time before the lights went off, and then I think the lights kind of gave us a little bit of a boost, and then we started coming back, and then somehow Baltimore just won.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting dynamic, but yeah, we definitely need to keep the lines of communication on so that everybody has an opportunity to grow and not be stale. But fans really have to understand that you have your favorite teams. You can be diehard however you want to be, but we got to do it with self dignity and self respect. Without having your own self respect, you can't respect others. And
that's
so
true. Good point.
that's how it fits.
Yeah, and yeah, you contributed pretty well for the Niners, and you had a great. I mean, you had a good NFL career, a very good NFL career, and you still want to coach, and you still want to bring a great foundation to these young kids. That's a good thing to bring to the table.
Yep. That's all we can do, man. Is pass it on. It was passed to us.
Yeah. So, have you ever like coached any of these kids that got to the NFL, or you haven't yet?
There's a couple kids that right now that are starting to look like they may have potential. They're still growing. Um, it's interesting to watch because they are now being led by a different set of coaches that have a whole different purpose. And every now and then we gotta sit down and retune and talk about some of those things. Um, and so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Um, so I got some kids at some major universities that University of Kansas is one. There's a few kids out there, yeah, that I'm excited to watch. And I don't
Yeah.
want to put them on spot. I just let them do what they do. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
say any names.
Nah, but you want to at least say, hey, at least I coached this kid, and he got to be where he's at.
Yeah, there's one in
Little credit,
Boise.
little
There's a few.
credit,
Yeah,
little credit.
well, it's not my credit. It's there. Look, I got them in middle school and high school. I
Okay,
didn't get them after they go to college and how they in their primary. I got them when they were really early to kind of help set a foundation.
and
The
develop their skills.
development they got, yeah, the development of their work habits of working out in the weight room, training every day, being disciplined in the classroom, going to class, getting an education, college, the whole bit. I played no part in that. I got a chance to give them back to their parents, and that's they get to run. But every now and then, they'll reach out to me and say, "Hey, coach, I saw this, that. Can you help me understand this?" Or, you know, so yeah,
Hey, at least you're still willing to do some coaching. But on the bright side, man, it's definitely good. It's definitely refreshing to see how you're doing since you've been out of the league for so many years. But at least you brought a lot of contributing, and at least you're willing to coach more down the road.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah, man.
absolutely.
I definitely appreciate your time, man. But we'll definitely maybe down the road we'll definitely have to chop it in a little bit. I like your knowledge. I like what you bring to the table and what kind of educated man you are, man. You seem to understand the game a lot better.
It's the game. It's a fun. It's a serious game. It's funny. I was going through some. For you younger guys, I still have some VHS from studies back in the day, and I was looking at some old study VHS tapes of. I think I looked at a little bit of Buffalo, looked at the Raiders, looked at Cincinnati, and the game, how it's written on the field, hasn't changed that much. They like to tell you they're coming out, but if you put spots on the field, they're still throwing to the same spots, most of the time to the same players of that position. Sometimes getting to it just a little bit different. but the football game hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It's a fun sport to watch. It's so much fun to watch. So I don't think it's a sport that I'll ever stop watching. I love it. So
Yeah, it's something I won't get tired of, even if they go into a softly. But
yeah, yeah. Even if they go flag, I'm still watching it.
yeah, we gotta still watch it either way, man. But yeah. I get what
So yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me.
anytime,
Um,
man.
and maybe we'll catch up during the season, maybe a game or so that you may want to talk about and discuss and talk about different things. I don't know if you review games afterwards or have conversations with,
Oh yeah, we can review
maybe.
about those. Yeah, we can review one of the games, but you just got to give me an available schedule, and I can work something with you.
Yeah, and also maybe get a couple of us on here together. That would be great.
Oh yeah, I can get at least some of my. Oh, speaking of somebody, I got a co-host who actually wants to get somebody in that's a former NFL player. Maybe we can
Okay.
get him onto the Brew Crew. He wants something a little more interesting. He wants a guest, and I said, why not we bring an NFL player? And he said that's a good idea. Let's try to work something.
And I see you got my boy 82 up there above you. I was just with JT. That's my guy. So
Wait, do you still keep in contact with him? I might want to get him on my interview, man, because I know he lives in Clovis, right?
yeah, he's out there. He's somewhere out there by not Modesto, Fresno. He's out there about Fresno, somewhere outside of Fresno.
Like Clovis, because I
Yeah.
looked up the directions of where it says on Clovis, and he's one of the residents. But any chance I can get in contact with him, man? Because I might want to get him into an interview.
Yeah, let me reach out to him. Let me holler at him and see what's going on. So
Yeah.
we may be able to get. I don't know if anybody, maybe a few of your followers know this, but Ricky Waters is my cousin as well, so you may be able to get him. So we're actually.
Ooh, Ricky Waters, yeah, that dude's awesome. Good receiving
So
back.
we had no idea that we were even relatives, and then found out that
Interesting, man.
his mother's maiden name is Pollard, and so yeah.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you come in a weird world where you're related to somebody that you didn't have an idea about until you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll definitely need to keep in contact, man. The more the merrier, man. I just like keeping contact going, man. So
Okay, cool. Well,
yeah.
you have any more questions for me?
Oh no. Like as far as questions, like okay, one more question. So how do you feel about the Niners matchup against the Jets, man? As far as the roster moves and all the other stuff, what player that you felt like should have made the roster?
Well, I've only heard of a few players. I haven't followed that close, number one. And number two
Okay.
is the Jets game is going to be, I technically call our first preseason game.
Okay.
I don't look at the NFL starting their regular season till the fourth, fifth game of the season because they really have not put together I don't want to say camaraderie, but they haven't really put themselves in a situation where starters are playing every series and really getting the system together, the timing together. You can do all that in practice, but until real bullets start to fly, you're not in a war. So I'm more curious to see is what the other guy's going to do on the other side of the field. It's been running his mouth since he ruptured his Achilles, and see if Mr. Rogers is going to be Mr. Rogers. And I ain't talking about the Mr. Rogers that came on after Sesame Street. I'm talking about the Mr. Rogers we know from Green Bay. I'm waiting to see.
Going to the Jets, yeah, that guy.
I want to see because we haven't seen that yet. It's been 2 years now.
Yeah, 2 years since he played it down with. And the crazy part is the guy that actually got him out on that game is on our squad, Leonard Floyd.
Well, that's not even a point to me. The bigger point to me is not to neglect that. I mean, I get that, but the bigger point to me on that is, I last year I wasn't crazy excited about our secondary. It was getting better, but this year our secondary looks a lot better watching preseason.
Yeah.
So I expect us to get busy. I'm hoping our linebackers will be healthy. I didn't see, you mentioned it. Did they keep Greenlaw? Is he still on the squad? Or they let him go?
Yeah, I think they have him on the PUP, so he's gonna miss some time. The cornerback that they decided to keep is They decided to keep Avery Thomas, but they're putting him on injured reserve, so that means they're going to probably just have him to return later in the season. So Darryl Luter's a guy they really like, but I think Ronaldo Green, the kid that we drafted from Florida State, he's looking really good.
Right, the safety. What about I thought they released number 0.
Oh, Samuel Womack. Yeah, they cut him. He got picked up by the Colts.
Oh, so he already got picked up. I expect him to get picked up because I thought he was actually a pretty good corner.
Yeah, I thought he would have been a good nickel, man, but they didn't use him right for some reason.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. But I think it's gonna be a great game regardless. But we're gonna have some timing issues. I went to the Dwight Clark Day, and that particular practice, Purdy threw 4 or 5 interceptions, and I was like, either he's seeing what he can or can't do, and doesn't really matter, or he's just not there yet. And so we do know Dobbs is ready. Dobbs is ready in any situation. So I'm safe with our quarterback situation as long as Shanahan's not trying to run these guys like they are running backs. So we'll see, and hopefully Ayuk gets that whole thing gets resolved real soon, because you could definitely tell that piece is missing.
Yeah, and then getting Trent back would be good also. So we'll see.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
they need to move. I wish they treat those 2 guys like they treated McCaffrey and Bosa, and just go ahead and pay the guy. Let's get it done, and let's stop playing the games, because number one, it doesn't look good to the public.
Right, because it's a distraction, and plus they're just making it sound like they don't even want to play, even with this kind of situation.
Right, it doesn't look good in the public. So, anyhow. Well, I appreciate you, man. I got to run. We've been on for a little bit over 45 minutes, but I gotta get back.
Yeah,
to
all right.
I gotta get back to paying the bills, my man. I gotta get.
All right, man. I got you, man. But hey, we'll definitely catch up sometime soon, man. And put a word on John Taylor if you can, man. That'd be nice.
I'll reach out to him and see if he. I don't even know how, because I didn't see John with a cell phone, so I know he has one, but. Does he know how to do this stuff and get all connected? Maybe his wife can help him. I don't know.
Maybe he's clutch for that. Maybe he's clutch for that, man. All right, man.
All right. Well, thanks. You guys have a great day, okay?
All right, you too, man.
Okay.